Hello, I'm Michael Orwig, and with me today is Sally Wurr, longtime friend of mine, going on 5 years now,
Yes.
give or take.
Yep.
Sally and I know each other from Toastmasters. You have finished and completed your first book.
Yay, yes.
We have Succeed with Purpose. And I've always seen books as being much like a child in pregnancy. So there is all of that, the birthing of the thought and everything else. And we'll talk a little bit about your book today. But you have so many positive attributes and positive traits. There's a lot of things we're going to talk about today. But you just went to a speakers camp.
Yes, I did. 2 days.
And part of that, of course, is dealing with stories and different things. And
Yes.
so, just as a form of introduction, give us a little bit of your opening that you were working on with your speakers camp, because it's a nice story.
It is, and it's really about developing your signature opening. Was the main part of it, and I've been playing with a part of my book, one of the stories in my book that talks about my trials and tribulations when my daughter was a brand new baby, and we lived in Eugene, Oregon at the time, and as some people may or may not know, it rains a lot in Oregon. Matter of fact, it rains so much that we steam clean the roof. Steam clean it, really. Someone comes in and steam cleans the roof every year to get the moss off. It rains that much. And one of the stories that I like to share with people is that we lived in Eugene, Oregon. My daughter was a brand new baby. I drove a car that had 2 doors, not 4.
Now, how long ago was this?
This is in 1985.
Okay.
So we're going back a few years.
We're back a few years. I had hair then.
Yeah, you have. I've always had hair. Anyway, but the story I like to share with people is really, babies ride in the back seat of the car facing backwards. And so the trials and tribulations of a new mom having to physically open up the door, push the seat forward, climb in the back seat, get the baby out, get my daughter Meredith out of the car, and then climb back out of the car.
SUVs didn't exist
They
then.
did not exist then, no. And station wagons, people just didn't do station wagons. And I always tell them I have a need for speed, and this car had a big engine, and so I was really okay with the car. I was okay with the car, but it the story I like that I opened with was it was pouring down rain, as it does so often in Eugene, Oregon, and we'd just come home, and I got out of the car, and in the very middle of your garage door is like a handle with a keyhole in it. And you had to physically go up. I didn't have a garage door opener. I had to physically go up, turn the key, put the key in, turn it, and then lift this garage door it was a two-car garage. Lift it up in this pour down rain, and then walk back to my car, dripping wet, climb in and pull the car in the garage. And it quickly, because I like to think I'm a fast thinker, I quickly realized I needed 2 things. Number one, I desperately needed a garage door opener because this was not happening, right? And then the second thing that I felt I really needed was a 4-door car, so that the ease of getting my daughter in and out, because, with a brand new baby, I've got a lot of years of helping her in and out of that car. But I was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And I said, well, the garage door, purchasing a garage door, that's pretty easy. You just run down to the hardware store and buy what you want and put it in. And it was fabulous to have that garage door. Getting a new car when you're a stay-at-home mom is not as easy to do. And it certainly wasn't easy in 1985 because we didn't have auto brokers. We didn't have the internet. So when you wanted to physically go out and find a car, you had to physically go out and find a car.
And look at every dealership.
Every dealership, because they didn't have multiple dealerships like they do now. And deal with all those different sales teams. Get an idea of the car you want and the price you're willing to pay. And once I figured out 2 or 3 cars that I wanted and figured out base prices for the cars and what it was going to cost me a month, I had to figure out how I was going to get that money to buy that car. And in my particular case, I decided that if I went back to work 2 nights a week, so we didn't have daycare, my husband could take care of our daughter in the evening. If I went back 2 nights a week and worked, I could make my car payment.
Okay.
And so that's kind of what I did. I figured out what all my numbers were. I knew them going into the car dealerships, where I had to be at, and I knew what I needed out of a car, because I'd already said I already needed that need for speed, and so I had to have a car that had a fairly good engine in it, because when I put my foot on the accelerator, I want it to go. I don't want to get out and feel like I have to
Are you
push it.
related to my wife?
Probably so. Probably so. So there are things that we all want, our wants and our needs, and what things I could just let go, because it had to fit a certain budget in order for me to buy it. And I like to share that story because many people, I always like to say that the word change is a verb, right? And it being the word change being a verb means it needs action. And so it was one thing to sit there and dream about, oh, gee, it would really be nice if I had a garage door opener, or it would be really nice to have a 4-door car. But when you actually take action steps to do that, now if my budget had been less, I would have had to buy a lesser car, but it would have still taken care of what I needed it to do, right? As long as it had 4 doors and it had an engine, I was going to be good to go.
And that's a lot of what your book is talking about, is different styles and different techniques that an individual could use. Now, you're a business owner.
I am a business owner,
and so
yes.
a lot of your perspective is from the business owner, but it doesn't mean you can't adapt them to personal items or whatever. And it is that understanding that getting things moving is very important.
Yes.
And writing things down. One of my favorite topics, and you mentioned a little bit, is the goal setting. It brings up different understandings as a creator and manifester of our realities.
Yes.
And within that, you of course, because of action steps, brings you into the importance of goal setting, the importance of writing things out that you're declaring to the universe.
Very true.
Is hugely important. But that's only one level.
Yeah.
And we're morphing and creating at a much greater level. And part of that is the letting go of victimhood.
Absolutely correct. You can't
So,
go there. You can't wallow
play with
there.
that a little.
And we all have adversity in our lives. Every single day when we wake up, we choose to get up. We always used to say getting up on the wrong side of the bed or the right side of the bed, right? I choose to always get up on the right side of the bed. I have expectations of what my day is going to look like, and sometimes it can fall short. My husband, a lot of people don't know, he's a severe asthmatic. He's been on life support 3 times, and I can tell you, probably on one hand, the number of people at the time he was on life support that knew he was on life support. And it's not because I didn't want people to say prayers for him and to bring light to help with healing and all that. It's because I didn't want people to take me to a different level than where I had put myself at. And yes, he was in the hospital, and yes, he was very, very ill, but it couldn't slow me down on the positive stuff that I was trying to feed myself during the day. I never once thought he was going to die, although I know many people, had I let them in on it, would have said that, or I would have picked up on that from them. Not everybody can handle that level of stress. But I think it's what's helped me throughout my entire life, in that never really believing the worst case is going to happen. Sometimes it does.
We have that concept of what you focus on expands.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's one of the easiest phrases to think about. Our society is not conditioned to, in this instance with your husband's physical difficulties, of saying, okay, I'm going to take time and I'm going to envision your husband completely healthy. Our society is not conditioned to do that. It's, I'm going to feel better about myself by saying, oh, I'm so sorry, dear.
Yeah.
And where's that vibration?
Takes you right down there.
It is not.
Rabbit hole.
You poor dear.
Yeah.
All of that is victimhood, instead of seeing your husband as the creator being that he is.
Yes.
The divine creator being.
Yep.
he's going through this as part of his path.
Exactly.
You have your role to play within that.
Yes.
And you've always been one of the very best that I've seen on always being positive no matter
what's going on.
No matter what's going on. To what extent is it a choice? Now, we always love to use that term and say, well, it's a choice. You're human. You're going to get...
I think a lot of it is God-given, for lack of a better word. And the way I was raised, I was not raised where a lot of negative energy would come from. My mom or dad were never negative people. They were always positive people. My husband, if you met him on the street, you would not know that he had the issues with illness that he has because he's always so positive and uplifting. I mean, people say that, well, what do you mean he's in the hospital? Well, I just saw him yesterday and he looked fine. I thought, that's the face that he puts out there because that's just how we roll, right? But I think that always hoping and planning for the best and staying in the belief that the universe is going to deliver exactly what we ask for. So be careful what you ask for and how you ask for it. And so when my husband is ill, I always ask the universe, please make the outcome be good. This is just a little blip on the screen of going through life. Life is never like this, right? Life is always climbing mountains, going in valleys. And sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. It just depends on where you're at energetically. And I try to always be, I like the view from the top of the mountain. And we don't even get into the regression and stuff, but I was an eagle in a former life, so I like high treetops. And I just think that that's just something that I was born with, and I've always tried to maintain.
Oh, that's good.
I like to be happy. I like to be up. I like to create energy in other people.
But just from that concept of what you focus on expands. One of my favorite phrases my wife and I got from Access Consciousness, Dane Hare in his books, and it was, how can it get any better than this?
Yes.
And something goes sideways. Things go sideways.
They do. Every day.
And as a traveler, and a pilot, longtime pilot, as well as a passenger on there, things get delayed, things go sideways. We flew standby. So you were always up for an adventure flying standby. Am I going to get on the airplane or not? And once again, one of the favorite phrases, instead of going into the way we are conditioned to go back into the worst case scenario, their phrase was, how can it get any better than this? And just and then not filling in the blank.
Exactly.
Letting the universe, the conscious universe, bring something to us.
Yeah, I share stories sometimes with people. I was meeting a group of people at a local restaurant for lunch, and we were going to be reviewing a class that we had taken together. And I showed up there, and I'm always early, right? And I'm sitting there, and I always bring things to write with because I'm tactile, right? So if I have a few minutes, I like to write. If something comes to mind, I like to write it down. And I'm waiting, and I'm looking at my watch and saying, gosh, I'm the only one here. There's like 7 people supposed to be here, and it's 10 after the hour, and I'm still the only one here. So some people would say, well, where are they? They all are late and blah, 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 blah. And they immediately go, how dare they waste my time, right? That negative zone. And instead I'm sitting there thinking, I'm logical, right? I'm sitting there thinking, okay, it's 10 minutes past the hour. I'm the only one here. I got something wrong. So I reach out to the lady that had put it together, and she goes, oh, I'm so sorry. She says, we're meeting tomorrow. And I go, well, I assumed I had the wrong day. And she says, well, I'm so sorry. She says, do you want me to come down and meet you? We can have a private conversation. And no, because here's the way I look at it. The universe knew that I, Sally, needed an hour of time to myself. And I wasn't giving it to myself. And so this was the universe's way of manifesting Sally having an hour of her time with her. I had already had my tea, sitting there, and I sat there for the next hour and a half, and everything just flowed. I started writing and writing and writing and writing. And my friend now, and the next day I met with everybody. Of course, everybody showed up on time because it was the right day and the right time. And she actually nicknamed that the Sally Wurr moment. And they had a radio show for many, many years, and they would always say whenever they showed up someplace that they weren't supposed to be, or a wrong day, wrong time, or whatever, instead of getting angry and frustrated and taking that energy that you've been building down that rabbit hole, you say, you know what? The universe knew I wasn't taking this time for me, and it's giving it to me. This is a gift. Be present with the gift, and do what you're supposed to be doing that time. So.
Excellent. And within our manifestations, are we looking at the symbols around us when we're asking, and the synchronicities?
Yes.
And we were just talking synchronicities the other day,
Yes,
and
we were.
all around that. And you have a wonderful story of when you were hiking or out in the Vale area and we're about to hike. Just tell us about that and the synchronicities on how the universe.
It just brings you whatever you ask for. I've been blessed that way. But my daughter had been in town for a while, and we were up in our place up in the mountains, and I'd been telling my daughter about the universe and how it always tends to deliver what we ask it for, and so to be careful about putting that out there, but just really to have her start opening up her mind to these different things. And we were on an elevator going down to go out for our hike. And as we're getting off the elevator, a lady was going on with her parents, and she looked at us. She said, "Are you going out for a hike?" And we said, "Well, yeah." She said, "My parents are tired, and they want to go to the room for a nap, and I still need to hike." And she said, "Would you mind if I joined you?" And we said, "No, absolutely, come along. More the merrier. Helps scare the bears away when more people are talking." And as we're hiking up the mountain, my daughter knew that one of the main reasons us being up there that week was that a lady that I was co-writing a book with. She's coming up, we're going to do final edits and find a publisher for the book. That was the whole goal of the week, was, to find a publisher. So that's what was in my mind this whole time. And as we're hiking up the mountain, my daughter was having this conversation with Charlotte. That's the lady's name. And Charlotte Grant Cobb, actually, is her full name. She's Dr. Charlotte Grant Cobb. And my daughter says, "Well, Charlotte," she says, "well, what do you do for a living?" And Charlotte just kind of says, "Well, she says, my husband and I are authors, and we have our own publishing company." And my daughter just stopped dead in her tracks, put her hands on her hips. She goes, "No." And Charlotte goes, "Did I say something wrong? I mean, that's a different reaction." And I looked at my daughter, Meredith, and Meredith looked at me, and we looked at Charlotte. I said, "Charlotte," I said, "I've been telling my daughter that my whole purpose for being up here this week is to edit this book." I said, "and that my co-author and I we're looking for a publisher." I said, and I told her that the universe always delivers. I said, and here you are, a random elevator at that particular time.
If there is such a thing as a random elevator.
Absolutely
yes.
Correct. I like that. That the universe would deliver to me exactly what I was there that week to do. I said, and so my daughter now is a believer in how those things, out of all the places that we could be, some stranger asked to hike with us, and she's exactly who I'm looking for.
And then you have like the Bogart from Casablanca of all of the gin joints and whatever that whole line.
Absolutely.
Of course, half the audience probably has no idea about the movie, but that's a whole other matter.
Well, and Charlotte, her and her husband live in the Phoenix, Arizona area, so it's not like I would run into her on a daily basis.
Right.
She was there because her parents were there, and it was just a random thing. And, that was many, many years ago, and we are still, Charlotte and her husband try to come up to Beaver Creek every year, and so I get that couple hours Charlotte fix.
And even if you didn't use them, that doesn't mean that you didn't get advice about publishing
Absolutely
from
correct.
them and all of that. It doesn't mean that, this has to be the one.
Yeah.
There may be a message as part of that as well.
They were supposed to be part of my world. Charlotte especially, she's just a fantastic person, and what they manifest in their life is pretty phenomenal. And I believe that. I have a very high energy level, and sometimes it can be overpowering for many people. But Charlotte also has a high energy level as well, and so I think that's why we just our brain cells kind of go like this versus. Yeah, and it's knowing those energy levels. I've become very cognizant of going into meetings, or I tell the story. A lot of times my dad lives in just north of Santa Barbara in California, and I'm going there, as a matter of fact, next week. And it's a 45-minute drive from my Santa Barbara airport to his house. And my sister and my dad are on a vibration level that is much quieter and calmer than mine. I'm like a tornado coming into the room. It's like I just smack them right up the side of the head. And so I listen to classical music on that 45-minute drive to my dad's house to bring my energy level down 2 or 3 levels, so that when I walk in his home, I don't create this energetic havoc that I can create in this nice, calm environment. And so I try to go in very, very calm and be very cognizant of going in calm, which is a whole nother, you just learn these things, right? When you're open to how you show yourself up to people. I am a very positive and high energy person, but I can quiet down when need.
And learning how to quiet is a very
Learning how to
important
quiet
one.
down. Yeah. And learning when you have to, when you should.
You have one daughter.
A daughter, yes.
And as part of our conversation, we were talking about along these lines, how do you get quiet to get your own information, whether it's for your business or personal, and how you've maybe conveyed that and tried to teach it to your daughter in her own line. But excuse me, everybody has to develop their own way of getting information from their higher levels of consciousness.
Yeah.
And what works best for you?
I probably the best for me is just trying to be present wherever I'm at. I have time because I am a scheduler, right? I mean, I have to mentally or physically write down what my priority items are, usually the night before. And do they always go true to form? No, sometimes I have to adjust. But when I am able to mentally block out time for certain things, it allows me to be present with wherever I'm at. And I try very, very hard when I have conversations with people, when I'm reading a book, when I'm writing, when I'm working on something for one of my clients, to singularly focus on it and only it. And try to block out all the other interferences. Because, we all have thousands of things coming at us at this hard, long pace. You and I were talking earlier about being in a noisy environment. Typically, if I am trying to work on something that takes a lot of brain cells, a lot of thought, I try to be in a very quiet environment. I don't want all the hustle and bustle going on around me. I used to be better with it, but I'm not as good at blocking it out. And so, for me, it's truly whatever I'm doing at the time, try to stay focused on what that is, whether that's for 5 minutes or for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. Try to stay as closely focused on that as possible, and keep all those other random thoughts that are poking, and literally they're in our brain right now. It's just, well, don't forget this and don't forget that. Oh, what time is it? And I try as much as possible to quiet the mind and just be present. Someone once told me that being present is a present, a gift that you're giving to those around you. And so when I think of being present, I think about being a gift. Someone's either a gift to me or I'm a gift to them.
You also use stream of consciousness writing.
Yes, I do.
To play with.
Absolutely.
How did you learn that, or did you just pick it up and start? How did you learn it and develop it for yourself? Because it's a wonderful tool for a lot of different purposes that people can develop.
And people, I've talked to a lot of people that have been authors. We're both in a world where a lot of our friends are authors, and I always ask them, well, how did you put a book together? And I know the lady that I co-wrote the one book with, I know what I learned her pattern of doing things, and it was a struggle for me because I was trying to develop my own form of writing, and her method really didn't work for me. And so what I started doing was I get an idea. So like the next book that I'm working on, I was just sitting, I was waiting for something, I can't remember what it was, but I was waiting somewhere and I had my notebook, and I just I just started writing. It was just all flowing. Well, this chapter, this chapter should be titled this, and this chapter should be this, and this. And I just started writing it down. And that's how so I have my chapters.
But you wrote it without any analytical as you were writing.
Exactly.
I just write.
I just write. And that's how I like to do it. It's like when I said I'm going to be at my dad's house for a week. Well, when I go to my dad's house, I generally have at least 4 or 5 days at a hotel by myself. I spend the day at my dad's house with my niece and my sister and her 2 kids. But then I go to my hotel and I can sit there and I can just write. And I just free flow. I might have music playing at a very low level just to kind of just get things rolling. But I have these chapters written out. And that doesn't mean that those are going to be the chapters or the order of the chapters. I just free form. And I'll sit down and whichever topic kind of sings to me, steps out away from the paper for me. That's why I'll just start writing. And I just write. And I just write until I can't write anymore. And then I go back, maybe that same day, maybe a couple days later, and I go, wow, that was pretty cool. Usually within that free writing, I've written 2 or 3 bases for chapters. And it just comes to me. It just does. I have a lot to say, obviously, and to be able to take what I think and what I know and put it on paper and then be able to take that out and share it with other people, I think is a really unique gift that not everybody has.
Well, and we were talking about mind mapping, too.
Yes.
And my generation was taught pure left brain, we're going to write an outline, you're going to control. Basically, it was about control.
Yes.
And left brain is about control. You're going to absolutely. No, the brain does not think like that. The brain thinks like a mind map where, as you were describing one of the speaker's trees, she had this beautiful tree. All of the low-level roots are the core topics that she likes to talk about. But as you would flow into these different branches of the tree, you'd have different topics, different branches, different
energies,
secondary branches, whatever it would take, but you'd still have her core message in her particular instance.
Yes.
But the mind map is much more how the mind works than these other, at least the way I taught. And of course, I haven't been in an English class in a very long time. But I know from my writing, it wasn't until I learned stream of consciousness, styles of writing, and in essence, basically channel writing, that I knew I could do anything in that particular area. And it's a wonderful technique for people to explore.
Yeah.
Now, to what extent has your daughter been able to play with it? Now, did you expose it to her when she was younger, or was she in her 20s? Because she's in her early 30s now.
Yeah, she's in her, I bet if I spent some time thinking about it, even when she was younger, that it would, I was probably already manifesting a lot of that and sharing that with her. She never grew up saying that, with us telling her that she had to have A's and B's. I understand. It's not. I'm not against people if that's what they do. We all have tools in our toolbox, right? That my parents never required me to have all straight A's and B's. They paid me better if I did, but that wasn't the goal in life. The goal in life was to find something that you love to do or love to be, and be a good person, be kind. And I think that's what we taught her to be. We taught her to be responsible, that actions have consequences, and learn those early and learn those quickly. The word no, when someone says no, no means no. And when you tell somebody no, if they ignore your no, that maybe they aren't the right person to be around. We all have boundaries, whether we know what those boundaries are or we aren't. I have some very strong ethical and moral boundaries that I live by. That doesn't make me better than anybody else. It's just my personal boundaries, and I'm just enough personality type that if people cross that, you have a real problem with that, and I let them know it. But for the most part, I stay pretty positive, and I think that's what she grew up with, was being positive and going where you really feel it has the best openings for you and where your strengths lie, knowing what your strengths are, really knowing what your strengths are. Someone once told me many years ago that, well, when you figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are, then just spend a lot more time towards developing your weaknesses so they become stronger. And I'm not a proponent of that. If that's a weakness, hire somebody for that weakness, or figure out how you can get by with that, but work towards your strengths.
See, now that's a very interesting topic, in that one of my favorite, well, I don't know if you were there when I did the talk, but Einstein's quote of don't judge a fish as his talent by his ability to climb a tree.
Very true.
And you allowed your daughter to really follow her own path.
Yes.
And it's a major point I have with all of these new kids coming in is we project as a parent, grandparent from our past into simulating what we think is the new future, but things are going at such a level of speed that, in my opinion, teaching kids how to tap into their own inner guidance, then as change occurs, they're ready for it.
Exactly.
Whereas we're not into a fixed structural mindset, we're in a time of enormous change. And you prepared your daughter to basically be an independent, good person and be in flow. And you had a challenge when she went to college.
I did have a challenge. She went to school.
How did you handle that?
She's an only child, so she's always been our singular focus, right, as a parent. And she had decided that she wanted to go further away from home to go to college, which we allowed her to do because it's all part of the growth, right, for her as well as for us. But oh my goodness, we're letting my newly 18-year-old, go so far away that's a 7.5 hour plane ride, right? And what am I going to do to keep from all those negative thoughts or those worries about, is she okay? And she didn't answer her phone and blah, blah, all these different things. And so that year prior to her going away, I said, Sally, you've got to do something so that your focus isn't there, because that's a wrong focus, right? That's a negative focus, and it's totally out of my normal.
And isn't that a conditioned focus?
Yes.
That society is conditioned on you. It
Absolutely.
wasn't that you had a natural fear that she would have a problem.
No.
All of this was, it's society type stuff that's been overlaid. That
when you think about it, you hear all the horrendous things that happened in Honolulu, right? I mean, it's just not really a safe city to be in. So they say. And so what I did is I decided, consciously made a decision that there was some huge goals I wanted to make with my company. And the fact that she's a senior in high school and she really didn't need me except for to be there when she came home, right? In case something happened. But so I made a conscious effort to really start working very, very hard in developing my company and really making it grow that year before she went away to college. So when we did drop her off, I had that momentary that moment in time when we're waiting for the car to take us to the airport. And I'm saying, what was I thinking? What was I thinking leaving her here? And you just have to, your inner self, you just got to say, you know what? I've done everything in my power to prepare her for this. She's got it. My daughter she may not be necessarily straight A student. She was a very good student. She just wasn't straight A's. But she has internal so much good street smarts. Street smarts are going to get you wherever you want to go. And when I say street smarts, I mean that she has common sense. She's got a very high level of common sense. She's very aware of all that's going on around her. She's very good at picking up scarier vibes, for lack of a better word, And so I knew that we'd given her all the tools to survive and do really well away from home. And really, we gave her the wind beneath those wings, and that she was ready to fly. And we just had to believe that she would do all that she needed to do to keep safe. And so we left her there, and obviously she did really well. And
But you also had the thought off camera that we were talking about. You described how you knew if you allowed her her path, she would find where she was supposed to go.
absolutely correct. I mean,
And it's
that
huge.
that whole time, sophomore, junior, senior year, when your children are starting to talk about their futures, because it's getting closer for them, right? And what they want to do, I had many friends that said, well, I wouldn't let, my kids are going to stay in state. That's all there is to it. They're not going to be allowed to go out of state because of the expense, or I'm not ready to let them go, or they're not ready to let go, or whatever that dynamics is. We all do what's right for us. And I've never been crushed under peer pressure by any means. And I said, our daughter's going to go where the right place for her to go is. And so we toured, that's her junior year, we toured a lot of different college campuses, including taking her and her girlfriend to Hawaii for that time to check out the school there. And I believe that she'd been given all the tools she needed, and she's a pretty good kid, that she would do fine there. I just had to make sure that I stayed out of her way. Well, I couldn't give her all those things.
But we talked on camera about the energy we were putting into the quantum field with that fear and how important that is within all of that.
And you just can't do that.
No.
You've got to downplay your own fears and not let them. My daughter, at no point did she know that I was scared to death for her to be that far away from me, because I had always been in control of ultimately the situation. And that started really when she got her driver's license, to be perfectly honest. Because when you let your child drive off in that car, you've got to believe that you've given them all the skills for them to always make those right choices. And so it was a very hard year for me to just, Sally, just let it go. It will all land the way it's supposed to land. But I cannot, and at any point in time, give her the fear that I was struggling to hide and to tamp down and do all these different things that take my brain cells into a higher level of vibration, keeping up there in that positive zone that I'd always had, because she's just enough of an intuitive to pick up on if I was scared or nervous. I'm sure she picked up on some of it. And I'm sure she had some of it. But we didn't allow that to stop either of us from what our path was supposed to be. And I think those 3.5 years that she lived on that island, she learned a lot about herself and what she's capable of, and a lot of great memories, a lot of scary memories. Hawaii is a great place, but you've got to have street smarts in Hawaii. You just really have to have street smarts. You got to be very conscious of what's going on. We went to visit her one time for spring break, and we took my dad along, and we're walking down Kalakaua Avenue, which is Waikiki, and they have cement pieces along the sidewalk that they have all their bushes and their flowers and all that in, and we walked by in this. A lot of the college she went to was a third Polynesian, a third European, and a third American, right?
Was she at U of H or Hawaii Pacific?
No, she was Hawaii Pacific.
My daughter went to Hawaii Pacific.
I didn't know that. So, and she loved all these different cultures, which is what makes up Hawaii, right? So there's this huge Samoan. I mean, Samoans. Yeah,
he's a big dude.
He's a big guy, and he hollers off, "Hey, Meredith!" And she runs over, and he just envelops her in this big hug, and I'm sure if there had been a camera on the three, her dad, myself, and my father, we all just went. And then she introduced us to him, and as a really nice man, just super cool. As we were walking away, she says, he's a lookout. She says they're on the streets, and they watch out for the people on the streets, and she says there's not a person on this street that would touch me, because they know that I'm friends with him. And I went, oh. Well, I feel better about that. But there again, she's open. She went to Hawaii with an open mind that she was going to enjoy all the different cultures that were there and all the different levels that the different cultures bring in, because Samoans have some great spirit, and because she was so open to their cultures and their stories and their beliefs and all that, they in turn internalized her, so to speak, and brought her on like a little sister to them. And I think that we all have to be aware of the people that we're around, and what gifts do I bring to the table, and what gifts do they bring to the table. And there's an old saying that's been around for a long time: you're in people's lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And so when I look at people and when I meet people, I always think of two things. I think reason, season, or lifetime, and am I going to be the teacher or the one being taught? Because every meeting that we have with people is going to fall in one of those categories.
One of the terms I've always used is we role play for one another. And instead of necessarily pointing that this person's bad or good or whatever,
Exactly.
no, they're playing a role for you.
It. Yes.
And it's a tremendous illusion of a play on a grand scale that we're part of. And my wife plays a role, I play a role for her. We play our roles at Toastmasters.
Yes, we do.
for the different people there. And it's just fascinating when you break away from the judgments that
Yes.
we are so apt to be conditioned to go into, and recognize if this person's playing a role for me and it's not exactly a warm fuzzy.
Sometimes it's not.
I need to be looking in the mirror.
Yep.
What's in it for me? Why am I participating in that particular event?
Yes.
Or whatever it may be. And all of that. It's fascinating.
It is fascinating, and it's continual every day. Every day that we have people come into our lives, and we have to wonder. I was thinking, well, why did that happen? What am I supposed to learn? It's one of the chapters of my book is called Work, W-O-R-K, and there's a period after every letter. And it's what I always try to share with people is life is work, right? Everything that we do is work, but work has been given such a negative connotation, right? But it's something that getting up out of bed in the morning is work, but it's also a blessing because there are people that can't get up out of bed, right?
Okay, so what does the W stand for?
The W stands for a willingness to step out of your box. If you want things to happen, you have to be willing to do something different than what you've done. The O is being organized. I'm a very organizational thinker. That's just the way I am. I'm a list maker. That doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that I live and die by that list. But I have to have it mentally. I'm a step-by-step processing person. And the R is for building relationships, like you and I. You and I and your wife, Lynn, we've built a friendship and a relationship with mutual, what's the word I'm looking for? Respect, for lack of a better word, for what we all bring to the table. And you and Lynn are at a much higher level of consciousness than I am. And I'm always striving to be there. But I circle myself around people like you so that I can learn more about me. I have another good friend that's very good about manifesting. And I think that's where, I'd say probably in the last 6 or 7 years, I think that's where I've developed even more of the things that I can do with my own mind and where I put myself and at what level am I at, and being aware of where my vibrational flow is at. But building relationships with people that you know, like, and respect, right? Because that's what we all are after. And then the K is kindness. The K is kindness, and I like to say kindness because so many people have been taught the only way to get from A to B to C is to go through B, to step on people's toes or to make your ego so big and lower theirs. The only way you can get to C is if you lower their ego or put them in their place or stomp on them or do whatever. You don't have to do that. Why can't what's that term that people use? High tides raise all ships or something. Why can't we all get to that higher level together? You can help me, I can help you. We all have that. I go back to my toolbox. You have strengths, I have strengths. How can we all help each other get better and do it in a very kind way?
Awesome. we'll have to end with that.
Yep.
But one last thing, how for your book, how can people purchase their book if they'd like to?
They can actually go to Amazon and they can Google the book, or they can Google Sally Wurr. And that's the easiest place. It's in.
And if they'd like to get in touch with you, your email?
Sally, yes, Sally Wurr at gmail.com. So SallyWurr at gmail.com.
Awesome.
That's the best way to get to me.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Until next time, this is Michael Orwig and the Wizard's Chest.